the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. The most powerful woman in the world? Jewish. An Israel-born chef cooking up a new cuisine, exploring Iranian Jewish culture, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. It's official. A Jewish woman will take on what's called one of the most powerful jobs in the world, and many are now calling her the most powerful woman in the world. The new chair of the Federal Reserve is Janet Yellen, confirmed by a 56-26 vote in the Senate Monday evening. Her first four-year term would run into the year 2018. By the time that first term is over, a Jewish person will have helmed the Fed for 30 straight years, with Alan Greenspan and then Ben Bernanke having preceded Yellen going back all the way to 1987. To give a sense of context, many in the Jewish community considered it a very big deal when Rahm Emanuel and Jack Lew served as the first two Jewish White House chiefs of staff under President Barack Obama. But that chief of staff job is not widely considered nearly as important as the Fed chair, and Emanuel and Lew held their chief of staff gigs for a combined total of only 31 months. When Yellen's first term is over, there will have been a Jewish chair of the Fed for more than 360 consecutive months. Yellen also ascends to her new job as the person widely considered the most qualified ever to take the job, having recently served as vice chair and before that, having led the San Francisco Fed. And if media reports are to be believed, there could be quite a Jewish pairing at the top of the Fed, with Stanley Fischer, who just spent 8 years leading Israel's central bank, considered a top contender to replace Yellen as vice chair. Speaking about people on their way out of Israel, Secretary of State John Kerry is on his way back to the United States after another round working on creating a framework agreement for peace between Israel and Palestine. While a framework doesn't yet exist, there are many reports suggesting that those inside the government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are increasingly open to the kinds of concessions that would be necessary to make a deal happen. Interestingly, one of the concessions Netanyahu is reportedly asking for is from America, not Palestine. Netanyahu has reportedly requested the Obama administration release imprisoned Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard in exchange for the release of certain Palestinian prisoners, as part of the scheduled prisoner releases negotiated to get peace talks moving. Background reports on this further suggest that the U.S. has not yet said no to Netanyahu's request, though both the White House and U.S. Ambassador to Israel Dan Shapiro have made public statements explicitly denying any linkage between Pollard's status and issues relating to the peace talks. Meantime, within Israel, the question of what to do with new recruits to military and national service deepens, especially with regard to the ultra-Orthodox. And now Chabad Lubavitch Hasidim have a special opportunity to engage. Lubavitch Israelis serving as emissaries or shluchim will have the opportunity to count that toward their Israeli service requirements. The decision comes from the Knesset Special Committee for the Equal Sharing of the Burden and is expected to apply to approximately 100 Lubavitch emissaries at the current time. This decision makes being an emissary for the Hasidic movement equivalent to serving in Israel's version of the Red Cross, called Magen David Adom, the Israeli police force, or the special group Zaka that provides for Jewish burial needs, as four non-military groups that satisfy service requirements for Israelis. A different kind of service in foreign lands being produced by Israelis these days is table service. Israel-born chefs are becoming an increasingly prominent part of the culinary landscape around the globe. Here in the U.S., Einat Admoni is making waves with her restaurants, and now she has a cookbook to go with them, as Meredith Gansman reports.
Balabusta is Yiddish for perfect housewife. But Einat Admoni has a different definition for the word, which is also the name of the newest of her restaurants and of her first cookbook.
I think the Balabusta today is actually being a magician trying to juggle between everything in balance between all the aspects of life. Balabusta first mean a perfect housewife. I don't know, it's something I'm aimed to be. The whole idea is to have an atmosphere of a very homey and cozy place.
Balabusta, the restaurant, feels more like Einat's personal dining room, where family photos line the walls and food is simple and approachable, but the flavors, both Middle Eastern and Mediterranean, are rich and diverse.
It's Israeli, but it's not just. I travel a lot around the world. I live in Europe for many years, and I've been in Asia for a long time. And for me, it's like, I would say it's much more Mediterranean than anything. But since my mom is Iranian, my dad is Yemenite, and my neighbor used to be Moroccan, I cook a lot of different kind of cuisine.
With her new cookbook, also entitled Balabusta, Admoni is on a mission to expose the hungry masses to new and exotic dishes. With 144 recipes divided into 11 chapters, organized not by course or food group, but rather by mood and situation.
So Ainat is going to show us a recipe that no matter if you are a Balabusta or just an average New Yorker who's hungry, we can make.
We have a fried olives. It's a manzanilla and kalamata mix, all-purpose flour. We have few eggs. I put a little bit salt just to break the egg, so it's going to be not too gooey.
Sure.
And then we have a panko breadcrumbs, but they're really fine. So we ground it, take a handful,
Okay.
we put it in the flour.
Should I join you in that?
You can.
Okay.
Coat the floured olives in the egg mixture, and then using a perforated spoon, toss the olives into the panko crumbs. And you'll notice this recipe is in the section of the book for romantic dishes. How about them olives? Admoni serves the fried olives over labneh, an Arabic cheese, circling the two with harissa. To see more from Balabusta, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Continuing a focus on Jews with Middle Eastern heritage, Christian Eden reports on a museum exhibit that reveals Iranian Jewish culture.
These are the faces of one of the world's oldest and today most threatened Jewish communities. And now, Yeshiva University Museum is illuminating their story with an exhibition, Light and Shadows, the Story of Iranian Jews. Created by the Museum of the Jewish People in Tel Aviv, the show is at the Center for Jewish History in Manhattan through April 27th. Yeshiva Museum Director Jacob Weiss gave TJC a tour and described the exhibit's approach to portraying 2,700 years of Iranian Jewish culture.
So this is an exhibition that traces and explores through beautiful art and artifacts and ceremonial objects, textiles, musical instruments, the richness and depth and diversity of Jewish Iranian culture.
In addition to the many cultural treasures physically on display, the museum uses technology to enhance the museum experience, including interactive screens to browse delicate Iranian Jewish artwork housed in other collections, video screens to view various documentaries about Jewish life in Iran over the 35 years since the Islamic Revolution, and listening stations for music. All to an educational purpose, Weiss said.
To give people a sense of the diversity of living experience through music, through writing, through textiles, through artifacts, through ceremonial objects, and through the beauty of art. This multimedia experience, the use of audio-visual, of music, of video, makes that experience more vivid.
Music was one way medieval Jews distinguished themselves in a largely Islamic culture, something reflected here with a variety of instruments from the region.
It's a kind of remarkable revelation to see these instruments and the tradition that they represent. While Jews really did have a second-class status through much of their sort of modern-day existence in Iran, they were given the opportunity to preserve not just Jewish music, but also Muslim and Iranian traditions.
This exhibition is one of two now on at the museum, which highlight Middle Eastern Jewish culture, the other being Threshold to the Sacred, focusing on the Egyptian Jewish community.
Most of the Jews in the medieval and generations back lived in the Eastern communities. Those two exhibitions, the Egyptian community and the Iranian community, bring to life two remarkably rich cultural Jewish communities in these areas of the world.
To see more from Light and Shadows, the Story of Iranian Jews, on now at Yeshiva University Museum through April 27th, please tune in to the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. Finally, Eben Alexander is a former neurosurgeon who has relied on his scientific credibility to advance his claim that he has proof of heaven. He's sold more than 2 million books with that claim and that name, suggesting that he could be planting the roots of a new religious movement. He recently stopped by TJC Studios to discuss his experiences and beliefs, and here are the highlights. So your book is a description of a near-death experience that you had when you contracted meningitis and were in a coma for a week. But the title Proof of Heaven is something that you've said in the past. You're not exactly pleased with the word proof, that you feel as a scientist that that's not what you're actually providing here.
Well, I think what the book and my story is very much proof of is that our soul or spirit does not end when the physical body dies. It basically is a very strong refutation of pure scientific materialism. And in fact, the Proof of Heaven, the title was the idea of the publisher. And when I first heard it, I said, no, that really won't do, because I knew from my journey, it was very clear to me that the workings of that infinitely divine, powerful, and loving deity at the core, at the source of all, would never, ever be understood by human brain and mind. And so in that sense, that God, that deity, is far beyond our saying yes or no to it in a scientifically provable way.
And so now that you've had this experience and given the lack of clear delineation regarding any specific religion, what are you practicing as a religious person in some way?
I would say yes, but the clearest lesson to me of my journey is that infinitely powerful, loving deity at the source and core of all that exists. That God loves Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, atheists, skeptics. That God loves all. So any teaching of a religion that they're the right one, if they have at a focus an all-loving, infinitely powerful God, is very misleading. To try and separate us out into different groups is just wrong. That's not consistent with what I saw in my journey from that God. And I would also say in my review of the relevant mystical traditions of all the great faiths of Kabbalism and Jewish mysticism, Christian mysticism, Buddhism, Sufism, that at the deep core, the mystical traditions all converge on one truth.
And so, as someone who, in a sense, you're tapping into kind of a new religious realm in America, around the globe, in the sense that you've sold millions of books and you're teaching a great many lessons. So is there an idea that you have of a should do?
Well, I think to me it was very clear, and I try and point this out in the book Proof of Heaven, that love and compassion and forgiveness and acceptance, taking care of the least and the last and the lost, taking care of our fellow beings, and not just about humans but about all life, that's the coin of the realm. It's the only important thing. And certainly some of the fears that come up in a purely materialistic mindset that think it's just birth to death, nothing more. When one dies, it's the end, that it's all about accumulation of material goods in the material world. That kind of thinking is very confused and misleading, because in fact, my journey showed very clearly, and I think it also validates and is supported by many other near-death experiences, that God is all about love, and that is really the only important thing.
You can see the full interview with Eben Alexander in the Interviews category under TJC Original Series on the Jewish Channel On Demand on cable. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Cable Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and on Comcast in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.